Hello there, people of the internet. How's everybody doing today? I'm doing alright, thanks for asking. I'm really glad to be out here on the range today. I was asked to go ahead and explain what Ring of Fire and Saturday Night Special hand cannons are. So, the term is used very loosely. It doesn't really talk about a specific handgun. It talks more about a genre of handgun. And essentially, Ring of Fire handguns are, well, whenever I say Ring of Fire or I say Saturday Night Special, the term is used interchangeably for anyone watching out there. Whenever I say that, I'm not talking about one specific firearm. I'm talking about like a plethora of all different sorts of firearms. And essentially, it is a firearm that is made extremely cheaply and sold extremely cheaply. A couple of decades ago, due to importation laws and whatnot, well, before these importation laws were put into place, small handguns and whatnot in small calibers, just like straight blowback cast metal handguns that were very crudely made, were being imported into the country by absolutely massive amounts. And they were being sold to criminal markets for extremely cheap amounts of money just because the handguns were very cheaply made. It didn't take a lot to get them over here. Well, it didn't take a lot to get them made, get them over here, and get them in the hands of people who should not have these firearms. And the criminals would use these firearms for whatever nefarious purposes it is that they were going to use them for. And after that, since the firearm was so cheap, they could just dispose of it or have it destroyed, or they could do something to get rid of the evidence without being out a lot of money. And it's just a good way to make profit in the criminal organization. There were some laws put into place to where the importation of these extremely cheap handguns could no longer be a thing. So there were companies that popped up here in the United States that proceeded to go ahead and make these extremely cheap handguns. And they made them as cheaply as they absolutely possibly could. And criminals all around the country would buy these up, and they would use them, and they would dispose of them. And the Saturday Night Special Ring of Fire handguns continued to play a part in our society. Nowadays, Ring of Fire handguns, Saturday Night Special handguns, are not as cheap as they once were. Back whenever they were being cheaply made and produced and sold and whatnot, they were not a lot of money back then. But nowadays, just because of the collectability behind them and whatnot, the prices on them have gone up a little bit. They're not exactly freaking high-end collector's grade pieces of equipment. But you could get yourself a Saturday Night Special that is incredibly cheaply made and incredibly unreliable, it just doesn't have the durability. You could get yourself a Saturday Night Special for the same exact price that you could get yourself something that is, you know, significantly more reliable and significantly more durable, significantly better put together, has a way better track record, has customer service, is not from, you know, a company that no longer exists. Like, for example, of course, I'm sure you guys saw this coming, High Point. You can get yourself High Points for cheaper than a lot of these Saturday Night Special handguns. Or hell, you could start, you know, getting into the Taurus G Series for the same price as some of these Saturday Night Special handguns, or the Sky series of handguns. You can get yourself some really nice polymer frame handguns that actually have locking systems built in to the handgun itself, or you can go with High Point and just have a straight blowback. And it does, people are charging the same amounts of money for these extremely crude, cheap handguns. So the idea of a Saturday Night Special nowadays is kind of an obsolete idea whenever we're talking about something that is extremely crudely made, because nowadays you can get yourself much better products for the same price as what these original handguns were. Now, back in the day, you could get these extremely cheaply, extremely numerous from any pawn shop. You just walk in, walk out, and you were not out a lot of money, and you could go ahead and do whatever nefarious thing it is that you were wanting to do. This is a good example of a Saturday Night Special handgun. This is my Lorson L9. These right here are extremely cheap handguns, and this right here is a good what's the word I'm looking for? This right here is, mechanically speaking, what most of them were. Straight blowback center fire, unless it was a 22 long rifle. Straight blowback pistol. It had very crude safeties on it. I went ahead and disabled the safeties just because they didn't work, and a lot of times they would malfunction and the handgun would stop functioning. The grip safety on this, absolutely awful. I disabled that as well. To actually disassemble this thing, I mean, it is an incredibly simple handgun. I'm not going to disassemble it just because I don't feel like disassembling and reassembling it. There's plenty of videos out there on how to do that, but you just kind of push this tab in, the slide lifts up and off. The barrel itself is fixed right onto the frame. It is straight blowback, nothing moves. These could be accurate since it is a fixed barrel if the handgun wasn't so extremely cheaply made. All of the metal on this is just cast alloy parts. On the bright side, you don't have to worry about any kind of rust or anything, but on the downside, they wear out very quickly, and these are notorious for falling apart upon firing. So I do have this one, and I have made some upgrades to this one. Like, I made some very cheap upgrades to this one, but this one is actually much more reliable and much more dependable than it originally was. And I went through and I redid a lot of the guts and internals in this thing. I still do not trust it enough to trust my life with it, and I would never trust my life with a Saturday Night Special, but I mean, if you don't have anything, then this is a hell of a lot better than having nothing. The original argument for the Saturday Night Special was people who couldn't afford a proper handgun could at least have something, even though it is incredibly cheap. But the clientele for the Saturday Night Special was absolutely criminals and organizations that should not have handguns or any guns in general. And they knew that going into it, but they still continued to manufacture, import, and sell these different handguns to these organizations that should not have had them. So I'm going to turn my camera a little bit here. I do have a 13-round magazine inside this thing, but because I've got 10 rounds of 9mm left in a box, I only have the mag loaded with 10 rounds. This right here, for all fundamental purposes, works just like every other semi-automatic handgun. You put your mag in. This particular one has this lip on the front of the mag. I don't know why that's there. And one of these days, I'm probably going to get around to like grinding that off or something. But that lip just drags along the magazine well of the handgun here, and it makes for an exceptionally tight fit. And if you don't have it like lined up perfectly, then you can't get that bastard in there. So I kind of have to like jiggle it around a little bit just to get it started. And then the mag seat's in there, and you have yourself, well, I have 10 rounds in this thing, but the mag here holds 13 rounds. You can get all sorts of different magazines for these different handguns. I picked this up off of an auction. I actually won this at an auction for $85. So this Saturday Night Special I got for quite cheap. Whereas most of the time these Saturday Night Specials are going to be running about 200 bucks. You know, 150 to 200 depending on the condition that it's in. And at that price you can get yourself, especially like on the used market, you could get yourself a very nice little handgun. Saturday Night Specials are no longer worth what people are asking for them. But people still pay the prices just because they want specifically a Saturday Night Special handgun. Let's send some lead here. Okay, so you remember how I said I worked on this handgun? It looks like the trigger is dead on this thing, so I'm going to try racking the slide. We're gonna see if that helps out any. Let me pick up my round here so I don't find that with my lawnmower later. Let's go ahead and send another round here, or at least try to. Nope, trigger's dead. Alright, so I'm gonna have to go into the internals of this thing. I'll go ahead and just splice in some footage of me actually using this. And I'm fairly certain that I know exactly what the issue is with this thing. Just ho ho ho. I got a cut on my finger and I just ground it along the what's it called? The slide serrations of this thing. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that, buddy. But motherfucker. Where the sear connects to this thing. A silkworm on me? I have a silkworm on my hat. What the fuck's going on in Florida today, dude? Peacock screaming in the background, silkworms on my face. trying to make a video over here with a Saturday night special that doesn't work. These right here are known to be incredibly unreliable handguns just because of the different things that make these handgun ticks. There's so many different things that can go wrong with this thing. Like, for example, our trigger here, I know exactly how this trigger works. Whenever you pull the trigger, a sear drops down, and normally once it drops down far enough, it releases the sear, pushes the firing pin forward, that strikes the primer. But sometimes the trigger, just with the very poor fitment and very poor mechanical nature of that particular system, sometimes whenever you pull the trigger, that sear doesn't drop down quite far enough. And whenever you hit the end of travel in the trigger, you are to the point to where the trigger is basically dead because it's not going down far enough. Like right now, it's not going down far enough. I can feel it engaging, but it's just not going down far enough. And unfortunately, sometimes whenever I do this, it'll start working again. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case this time. I will have to get inside the guts of this thing. So I guess I'm going to have to take it apart anyway. And the safeties, it's not a safety thing because I can feel it engaging that sear, but that's just the nature of the beast with these right here. Honestly, I think that right there is like a really good tidbit to have on this video, an unwelcomed malfunction with the Saturday night special that I'm over here talking about. They are exceptionally cheap handguns, guys. They are not designed to use on a normal basis. They're designed to use for one particular purpose. They're made to be disposable. You get rid of them. There's a reason that the importation of these ceased to exist a while ago. I mean, yeah, we have them, you know, now in the country. I guess High Point would be considered a Saturday night special nowadays, but for not a lot more money than, you know, what you can get a High Point for, you can get yourself something a lot better. And if you're going to be, well, I guess if you're just going to dispose of it, the High Point does have a melting point that's a lot lower than some of the steel slides and whatnot that the other firearms are made of. That's not a tip. I am just saying that as a fact because of the alloy that High Points are made of. So, I mean, that's probably not something I should get around to saying here on the internet. Anyway, hopefully I made my point. These are not good handguns by any stretch of the imagination. Hold on, I'm trying to take this out of here. Not good handguns by any stretch of the imagination. This is clear. I'm going to keep pulling this trigger because sometimes it starts functioning again. It was more reliable whenever I'd gone into the guts, but that was freaking 2-3 years ago at this point. And I actually made a video on the upgrades that I made to this handgun if you are interested in that. But it looks like that trigger is absolutely dead, so there's nothing I can do about that. My bet, if I had to just make a random assumption, the spring probably got caught in the sear and the sear's not quite able to pull down far enough, just because of the tolerances of everything that is in there. The spring, like the little coil of the spring, will sometimes pop up around the sear and the sear can't quite be pulled down far enough. That's just the nature of these really cheap guns. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Description down below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and go check that out if you feel like it. I'm gonna go throw this in my closet and make a note to work on it and probably not work on it for a long time. You guys know how that goes. It's not exactly a priority here. So I'm gonna go do whatever the hell I'm gonna do. Thanks for watching, guys. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. Leave me any questions or comments in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. once I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.